Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video in the Minestom Minecraft server development series. In this video, I'm going to teach you guys about items. So this should hopefully be a short video because items are not too complex to figure out. What we're going to be doing here is making a new command. We're going to call this the weapon command. And this will be just used as a simple command to give ourselves an item. And we're going to learn how to actually do that, how to create items. So we're going to create a constructor. Let's remove all this. And we're going to give the command a name. So we'll just call this weapon. Let's start by creating a default executor and implement it. So we're going to say if the sender is an instance of a player. We need a player because we cannot give items to just any command sender. They have to be specifically a player. So we're going to make sure that the person who runs the command is a player. If they are not a player, then we're just going to send them a message saying you must be a player to run this command. So an item stack is simply a way of representing an item in Minecraft. So if we want to do item stack sword, we can create a new item stack by doing item stack dot, and you have all these different options here. Of is the most simple version of this. So if you do of, you can provide a material. Same way we have for blocks. A block can be made if you specify the material, which is just what type of block it is. So same thing for items. Every block and every item in the game has a material backing it. So whenever you create a new item stack, you need to specify the material that the item will represent. So if we want a diamond sword, for example, we can do material dot diamond sword. That easy. And if you want to, you can also specify an amount when you're doing an item. So you could say 3 or 1. 1 is the default, so you don't need to put 1 if you don't want to, but that's how you can specify the amount of an item. And that's the most basic bare bones way to create an item. So now that we have our item stack, we can add it to the player's inventory by doing player.get inventory.add item stack and then pass in the sword. And then we'll just send the player a message saying a weapon has been added to your inventory. Before we learn how to customize this item even more, let's go ahead and register this command and test it out so we can make sure that this works. So we're going to do Minecraft server.get command manager.register new weapon command. That's all we got to do. So now let's start up the server and join it and see if this works. All right, back on the server now. So I'm going to do /weapon. And boom, I've been given a diamond sword. So it's really that simple. I can do whatever I want with this now. You know, I could kill stuff. There's nothing to kill, but I could theoretically. But yeah, you can do this with any material in the game. So literally anything that you have in here, you can get an item stack for it, which is pretty awesome. But most of the time, you're going to want a more complex configuration for this item here. Maybe you want to give it a name, some lore. So to do stuff like that, instead of doing .of, we can make a builder. So item stack.builder. And into the builder, pass in the material. So we're going to go ahead and let's do a diamond axe instead. So diamond axe. And then now we could do dot and make sure it ends with dot build. Just like our other builders that we've done in the past, like with the component builders. Dot build is how you finalize it, and then it gives you the actual item stack that you can use to add to the inventory or whatever you want to do with it. So in between though, the builder and the build, you can add methods that will do different things. So for example, you have a glowing method. So you can do glowing, and this will make it so that the item glows. Pretty self-explanatory there. You could set lore, I'll show you that in a second. You can set custom model data, hide extra tooltips, the max stack size. You can set a custom name for the item. You can change the material again. So all kinds of stuff here that you can use to customize the configuration for this item. So let's try doing the custom name. And for this custom name is expecting something called a component, which we learned about 2 episodes ago with the adventure library. And so since we already know about components now, we can do component.text. And now we can put whatever you want. We could say magic sword. And then we could add some color to that if we want to. We could do named text color dot, we'll do dark aqua, and then we can set a decoration of text decoration italic. So I'm sure you can imagine what that will look like, but we'll see that in just a second here. You can, you could try and format this the best way you can if you want to, or what you could do is just cut the entire thing and make it a separate little variable, so it's just a little more easier to read. So we could say sword name, for example, something like that, and then you could just pass it in. And we could also do something else. Let's do one more thing. We'll set the amount for the item. So we'll set 2. And yeah, let's just take a look at what this looks like. So now we should have a sword that is or actually a diamond axe item, right? It's going to be glowing, whatever that means. It's going to have a custom name of magic sword that should be purple and italic or dark aqua. And then it should give us 2 of them. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, back on the server now. So I can do /weapon. And look at that, I'm given 2 of them right away, so that's good because I specified 2. And if you hover over it, you can see that it's a magic sword. You can see that it has the dark aqua display name and also the italic text decoration, so that's working perfectly. You can also see that it is glowing, so it's like an enchantment sort of glow, so that's what that does. So yeah, as you can see, it's pretty easy to make these items and give it configuration just using the item builder. It looks like it gave the axes in 2 different slots because, as you would expect, you can't really hold 2 swords at once. So I just want to test out something real quick. I actually haven't tried this yet. You can see that we can do the max stack size. So I would imagine that this controls how many of them can be in one stack. And for a sword or an axe or something like that, it can't be. It's just one probably because, as you can see, it placed it in 2 slots. So I wonder if I set this to 3, this should hopefully allow us to have 2 diamond axes in one stack. So let's try this out. And look at that. So now we have 2 axes in one stack, which is pretty cool. So we learned how to do a custom name. We know how to do the amount, the max stack size. Another very useful thing is the lore of the item. The lore is just the text that shows up below the item name. So in this case, the lore, it has some extra lore like win in main hand and the attack damage and all that stuff, but you can get other text to show up under the name. So this is asking for a list of components or an array of components as var args. And each of these components here will be a single line. So for example, I can do component.text. We could say line 1 and then component.text. This would be line 2. So that's how that would appear under the item. So let's just take a look at what that looks like. Okay, I'm back. There we go. So that's how that looks like. The default styling for that is a purple and italics sort of look. You can override that, of course, because we're using text components. So you can just set the color manually or set the decoration manually and override that. But yeah, that's what lore looks like. So for example, so I'm sure you've seen that on servers. If you ever played on any sort of server where they have, custom stuff on it, you can imagine that you're given an item that, does something special, and the lore allows you to set a description for that item so that you know what it does. So that's why a lore is very useful. So I could, say something that describes what this axe does. I keep saying sword, but this axe has magic powers. You could literally put whatever you want and add some color to that if you want to. So named text color dot gold, literally whatever you want. So that is what that looks like. Pretty cool in my opinion. Something else that I'll note here is that these item stacks are immutable, meaning that once you create one of these things, they cannot be changed. That's what immutable means. So once I have this built sword item stack as a variable, I cannot do anything with it. You have all these methods here that will get you information about the item stack, like the material, the amount, and other stuff like that. But these other methods, like width, for example, like width amount, this doesn't allow you to change the amount of the current item stack. This will give you a copy of the current item stack with the new amount. So for example, if I was to do width amount of the sword, this would be like sword 2, for example. So sword.widthAmount 3, this would give me 3 of those swords and just copy the entire item stack into this new variable here. The reason it copies it is because, again, it's immutable because you cannot change the original one. And as the documentation says, having it being immutable, like the other things in this library, allows you to have something called thread safety, which means that you cannot change the same object from multiple threads. So for example, this is a little more of an advanced topic. We haven't really got to this, but in the future, if you have multiple threads that work with the sword here, if they try modifying it at the same time, you could get really weird results. So having them be immutable where you cannot change it once it's built gives that benefit of not having weird, stuff happen. It also says the ability to reuse the item stack in multiple places. So for example, if all your players start with the same set of items, you can just store those items as constants and add them to each player's inventory to avoid a lot of allocation. So all that means is that, for example, if I want to make it so that every time a player joins the server, I give them these items here, I could just store these item stacks as constants or just variables, at the top here, and just reuse them as much as I want. I don't have to reinstantiate them and change them, every single time and all that stuff. So with all that said, being immutable gives us benefits, but also just means for us as people who program that you cannot change the variable once you create it, okay? And again, that's why we have these with methods here, but it will not, modify the original one. It will give you a new one, a copy. So if I was to do with material, it would give me the original thing, but with a different material of whatever you specify as a copy. One more thing I want to teach you guys about whenever you're creating these item stacks here is that there's also a method called set. And this one's a little different. This one expects something called a data component. And data components in Minecraft allow you to control different properties about items and also things like entities. Similar to how we did it with blocks. Blocks, you have the block properties for the block state. We can do something very similar with items as well. So all we need to do is do item component dot, and you have all these different options here, like the base color, bees, like can break. Some of these are pretty self-explanatory, like can break makes sense if you can break it or not. Fireworks, that doesn't, I don't really know what that does, but rarity, recipes, tool, trim. I'll show you guys how to find what these mean in a second here, but for example, we have stuff like the custom name. So custom name, this is how you can set a name as well. So after you specify the item component property that you're trying to set, it also wants you to specify the value for that usually, right? But since we specify that it's a custom name, for a custom name, it wants a component. So it filled that in for us. So now it's asking for a component as the value. So we could do something like, so we could literally just use this text component up here. So sword name, and that's how that would work, okay? And so you may be wondering, what's the difference between this one and this one? We use custom name, and it's really just, this makes it easier, right? If you just have a dedicated method for setting the custom name of an item when you're building it, that is easier than doing set, specifying the property, and then providing it. So this method here does the exact same thing as this one here, it just makes it easier. So of course it doesn't make sense to have this one because we already have this one above. And there's a little trick, if you hold control and click into this will show you the implementation of the method, which as you can see does the exact same thing that we just did. It sets an item component custom name and then expects a component and passes it in. So if we just do Control Z to bring that back here, again the question is, how do you know like what these different things do and what the options are besides just doing, you know, dot and just looking at them. And just like before, we have documentation for that. So I'll have a link for this in the description below, but this is the data component documentation. And if you just read into it, data components, or simply components, are structured data used to define and store various properties. They're used on items, where they are referred to as item components or item stack components, and also block entities, partially replacing MBT format. You can see that we have a list of components section, and this gives you all the different components that you can put on these items that we're creating. You can also look at the top here on the right. It shows a full list of them that you can click into. So for example, we can click on hide tooltip, and this will tell you exactly what it does. So if set, it will completely hide this item's tooltip, including its name. You have food, which is a way more complex one. So the food stats for this consumable item. So as you can imagine, if you have a food item, you can customize the food stats for that using that data component. You have a dyed color. This is useful for a leather armor piece. You can see that we have the custom name here again, which is what we set before. So hopefully that helps you out. That's very cool, honestly. So we could set, let's just try doing the hide one. So hide tooltip. And if we do Control P, this is asking for a unit, but you can pretty much ignore this one. This one does not want any value. So you don't need to specify true or false for this one. If you just have the data component on this item, it will automatically hide it. You don't need to say like true or something like that, okay? Let's take a look at what this looks like. Okay, we're back in the server, so we can do /weapon, and look, now when we hover over the item, we don't have any tooltips at all. So, and you can add as many as you want. So you can do item component like damage, for example, and set the amount of damage on the item. And if you read into that, this is basically the this controls the durability of the item, not the actual damage that the item does. So you could say like it has 500 damage, and this will, you know, affect the damage bar on the item, okay, for the durability. You also have something like jukebox playable. This one's really cool if you read into it. This will allow you to make the item jukebox playable, meaning that whenever you put it into a jukebox, it plays a specific CD, or rather song rather. So if you do Control P to reload this, it's asking for now a jukebox playable type. And if you just explore this, you can do new jukebox playable, and now it's expecting a jukebox song, and you can do jukebox song, it's an enum dot. You have all these different jukebox songs that you can play. So you can do, you know, cat, for example. And so theoretically, I haven't really tested this out because jukeboxes are not implemented. But theoretically, if you put this item into a jukebox, it should be able to play the cat song. So I haven't really tested that out, but if you want to try it, then go ahead. I'll just show you that it doesn't break the server by reloading real quick and joining /weapon, and boom. So it doesn't show anything, but theoretically, like I said, if you put it into a jukebox, it should be able to play that cat song, okay? But anyways, guys, that's pretty much it for this episode. This is how you can create item stacks using Minestom. Just like everything else, they make it really easy. And items are a big part of Minecraft servers, so now you should be able to add some even cooler stuff to your Minecraft server implementations and configure a bunch of cool stuff as well. So hopefully you guys learned a lot in this episode, and I will see you guys next time. So that's it for this video, everybody. I really hope you learned something new. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to also check the description below for important links to code and other resources, but also really important, join our Discord. We have a big community of over 5,000 programmers, and it's a place where you can find new friends or get help on any code that you're stuck on. If you want to support what I do on this channel, please consider hitting the join button below, and this will allow you to support my channel for as low as $1 a month, but there are different tiers to choose from if you want to. For anyone that becomes a member on my channel, you get a special rank on my Discord server, early access to new videos, and you can just see yourself on the screen right now. So if that sounds cool to you, feel free to join. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you can't, that's okay too. I really just appreciate you watching the video anyway. Thank you so much. And that's it. Peace.